on my third FireAlpaca video. As you can see, the site is up again. And this time I will be getting into a few more of the details, including snap, some of the select features you have here, the filter selection here, and our button. The anti-aliasing, sorry. So without further ado, let's just get started with snap. Snap I didn't go over in my previous video. It's a pretty simple tool to use. Pretty much you can get these lines on snap and use them as, or rather they become your guidelines to draw straight lines in a crisscross pattern, so on and so forth. Custom pattern for radiating from simple points. You have your actual radiating snap. You have a circle snap, which glitches. You saw the glitch there. Or if you go too far out, it will start jumping from line to line. So, circle is a little touchy sometimes. And the last one is a freeform curve snap, which is a pretty fun snap to use. People use it a lot for ponies, for just more flash-like features in your drawings. It does create a very nice curve. This was not a good one. And it also has a lot harder time glitching like the radiating, or not the radiating, the circle one does. And you have a start and stop point, and it works out pretty well. So, a little bit more with snap. You have this little button here that allows you to change directions of where you're going to be snapping your lines to. You can change that one. Your crosshairs can't. This one can. Just starts you back over. The radiation one, you can see that it's already clicked there. I can change that to any point. Circle one will also change if you have that button clicked. And for a new snap with that, it's the same thing. Snap, like I said, is pretty useful. It's great for backgrounds, great for perspective, great for curving lines if maybe you only have a mouse instead of a tablet. It does react to pressure if you do have a tablet, and is all around really nice, especially if, say, you're drawing a lizard tail freehand and you just can't get that line right. Snap will help with that. You can also turn it off just like that. And as I showed in my shortcut tutorial, you can select snap just by hitting numbers. Like if I were to hit number 3, I'd have my grid. Next thing I'll be going over are the selections. So with selection, yeah, look at that glitch. And it's always been like that. You have to make these circles slowly and carefully to make them look right. Anyway, back to select all of the features. So you can select all, which would just select the entire screen there. And select out of that. Once you have something selected, that's when a lot of these will come up. So let's just select by if it's transparent or not. So you can see that it's selected around all of my lines that I've drawn here. So it says, okay, so these are going to be these are the lines that I can see the best. If I were to have drawn in pen, it would have created a little bit of a different effect. If I pull that back up, more glitching. So now we'll select again. Wrong one. That's what I want. So it'll select differently once you hit brightness. It works best with other colors, and if you're using pen versus a pencil versus your airbrush versus watercolor. But pretty much this will just select around the areas that you have selected here. From there you can also select transform. So just as before, you can transform pretty much anything. You can make it small, you can make it big, make it skinny, either way. And by holding down the command key, you can also change perspective, hitting OK or enter. You can see that those are still selected. I'm going to leave those selected because the next things I'm going to be going over are the selection border, the contract and expand, deselect, and inverse. So if I were to hit deselect, it would just leave the screen unselected. If I were to select inverse, it'd select everything outside of these lines. And a fun thing about once you have the pencil selected, you can actually kind of draw in those lines. Where am I? You can expand your selection. 1, 2, 3, 4 pixels expansion. That'll more or less get rid of it, like it did. And you can contract. So let's make it bolder by 6 pixels. Once it catches up with me. So it's selected a little bit bigger. And it just depends on how you have it. So if you're going to expand, everything in that white area is what is selected, and everything that is in that purple area is not. So it's inverse. So in other words, I can color in those white clear areas, and I can't in the purple. And then finally there's a selection border, and it's on boundary, outside or inside. It's going to be whatever color you have selected in the front here, and you can make this a decent size border. And since I had it on the boundary, it goes both inside and outside of that boundary line. Up next is all of our filters. And I know this video is going a little bit faster, but these are a lot of tools that usually just require people playing around with and having fun with to figure out a lot of this themselves. So this is just the basic overview of what you can do with these basic things. Anyway, if you go to filter, first thing first, let's change the colors. A couple colors. So by going to filter, you can change the color level. So you can make it darker, you can make it brighter, gray, white versus gray, black. And that changes that. If you go to hue, it'll actually change the colors to whatever you want. Change the saturation, make it more of that color or less. And change the brightness, make it super bright, super dark, so on and so forth. From there, you can blur. The Gaussian blur can take the longest to process on a computer, as I've come to notice with all of my computers and all programs. So I'm not going to accept the blur that I have here, just because it'll be loading forever. But it's nice to have a blur if you're shading and you like the soft shading. This is probably going to be your best friend. Other Yeah, don't even try the blur tool sometimes. So that's going to be your best friend there. Mosaic, it pixelizes everything that you have drawn to a certain size of pixel. So it's every 27 pixels, every 20, 19, whatever your poison is. It'll just pixelize it and does give it a cool effect. Extracting lines is a little harder for me to explain because I'm still learning how it extracts lines. But the basic idea is the harder, the more shaded in that line is, the more you're going to be able to see it. So you can see that it's affecting the pen more than it's affecting that pencil. Of course, you can also select like the sides there and give it parameters that it can't cross. Like I said, I'm still learning this, so I can't give you a lot of details on what this will and will not do. I've used it a few times in pictures, but it's still a new tool for even me. I've noticed the darker and the more pronounced the line is, the more it'll react to it. Finally, in filter, and I'm actually going to be adding some new layers to this and clipping them down. I'll be going over those in other videos. But by doing that, I'm actually going to turn that off first. You also get these two filters called Cloud and Sand, and they are pretty much textures once it loads. So you can see that cloud is this sort of texture. And if I clip it down to the other one, it'll do that. And sand is going to be another texture. Once it loads. There it is. And as you can see, it actually uses both filters use both colors that you have off the side here, so keep that in mind. And again, you can make it look however you wish by clipping it or by using it to your advantage. They are wonderful textures to have if you're in need of them. And they do stay basically as they need. So that's always a good thing. The last thing I'm going to be going over is going to be my favorite word, that one. Because I'm not too tired to be talking right now. Anyway, this button is pretty much pixel or no, is how I've come to understand it. So I'm zooming in so you can see the difference between what these will look like. So this is with that selected. You can see that the lines are actually going to be very soft. You can see they fade out here on these 3 pixels, which makes it kind of hard for the bucket fill to fill in if you don't have it expanded by any pixels or anything like that. You can see the lines on the outside here, and if you have it expanded to 1, you can see it fills it in a little bit better. By turning that button off, you can already see that the lines are much harder, much more like MS Paint. Even zooming in, you can see that they're all jagged, hard lines. So zooming out and getting my bucket fill tool, no expansion, and I'll also turn the button off here. You can see that fills it in just fine. By turning the button on, it does create a softer finish around the edges. So it just depends on who you are, whether you want that or not. It works either way. If you're looking for pixels, then you might not want to have the expansion on, and you might even just want to be using the pixel tool here, because as you can see, it only has that option, and it's always going to be pixelated. It doesn't react very much to pressure sensitivity, so That's when you're using like 1 pixel and it's only about 1 pixel wide versus 3 versus 2. So if you're working with pixels, I do still suggest the dot brush. But as you can see, that is on pretty much every tool you can use. And it's just, do you want the lines softer on the outside or do you want them not soft on the outside? It's used in the selection, it's used everywhere. So it is entirely up to you whether you are going to be using that or not. And with that, that's all I really have for this video. It was just supposed to be a little bit more into the simple tools, some stuff that I maybe glanced over in my last video and just didn't touch on too much because it was already getting up to 25 minutes long. And so with